Guess what day it is, man? It's the second day of the work week, and it's our favorite day of the work week, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Because it's time for the sports court. We're in Houston, Texas. I'm live with Gregory Moonlight Baby. There's a story behind that. You'll get into it here in a minute. But we're thrilled to get in here with you guys. We got NFL training camps kicking off. There's all sorts of banter and talk about possible trades.
Game day.
New news on Deshaun Watson. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the Astros blowing a big lead last night. And we're also, the first thing we're going to get into, Greg, we're going to recap the NBA Finals. Let's talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks bringing home an NBA championship finally. Now, is this correct? I want to ask you real quick. Is it true the last time the Bucks won a championship is also the last time the Cowboys won a Super Bowl?
1971 was the last time the Bucks won a championship.
So no, that is not correct.
Bucks. 1971?
No, I know the Cowboys.
Oh, it's not correct.
It's not correct.
It's not true. No, so the last time the Cowboys won was 1995.
But did they win one when the Bucks won the championship?
In 71, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
I want to say it was
be
against was it the Baltimore Colts or the Dolphins?
I guess could this be
Roger the
alluding
Dodger.
to a possible Cowboys rebirth and championship this season?
Hey, you know what?
I saw a meme that said that the Suns, the last time the Phoenix Suns lost in the NBA Finals, guess who won the Super Bowl?
Who was that?
The Dallas Cowboys.
What?
The stars just may be aligning for the star.
Hey, you know what? Well, you're preaching my language right there, brother.
I know I am.
I hope that's the case. And, hey, if that is the case, the Cowboys, we'll talk about them as the show wanes on. But when we talk NFL, of course, we're going to talk some NFL. We're going to talk some NBA, a few Olympic tidbits. Simone Biles, she actually withdrew herself from competition because of mental issues in the Olympics. Kudos to her for doing that. But we'll talk about that briefly. But as far as the NBA championship, much credit goes to Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks for getting the job done. Chris Paul, CP3, as great as he is, Eddie, as great as he is, before we talk about Giannis and give Milwaukee their props, what do you think it does for Chris Paul's legacy? For him, he's the first player ever to blow, 4-2-0 leads?
Man, you know what? It's really tough because going into this series, all we were talking about was how Chris Paul has sort of just built on top of his resume, how much this helps him, what he's done with this young team, and being able to shoulder the load, be the guy, do what James Harden couldn't do here in Houston, guy over there in Phoenix, and I hate to see it get taken away or it to get tainted because he wasn't able to get the job done. I don't think it all falls on Chris.
In the fashion that it happened.
Absolutely. I mean, but if you think about it and you look at that team, you look at Milwaukee, they're a team that they thrived in that situation, in being down two and going back home and getting things right, figuring out, going to the drawing board and figuring out how you're going to stop their offensive attack, and then figuring out on the other end what you're going to do to take advantage of the mismatches that you had, and that's what they did. Once they figured out Phoenix and how they could beat them and how they could have an advantage, they were taking advantage of those advantages time in and time out, and Phoenix never could catch back up.
That's true. And then if you look at the way they dominated
So to me, it's not on Chris.
No. I totally agree with that.
It hurts
it's not
his
on
legacy,
Chris Paul.
but when you're the guy who always comes up just a tad bit short, then that's just another mark on that that resume right there of here's a guy who just couldn't get it done.
Yeah. Again, the fashion that it happened in, being up 2-0, and again, Phoenix had a better year than most people expected. Everywhere Chris Paul has been, if you look at the Hornets, he helped turn that franchise around, get them very. Then if you look at what he did with the Clippers, even though blew a 2-0 lead, but helped get that team back respectable. Then, of course, with the Rockets, had them on the verge of a finals run.
I mean, you can make the argument that he was the only reason why. I mean, you got to give James credit for being the scorer and the player that he is. But without Chris Paul, I don't know if they ever get to the cusp like they did.
Yeah. Now, I will say this, not to discredit Chris Paul in any way and not to even go back into a discussion about this, but I will still say to this day, as much as I love the Rockets, and I jumped on Golden State's bandwagon at that time too, in that game that everybody says that the Rockets, I hear a lot of people saying, I think the Rockets would have won that game, blah, blah, blah. The way I remember that game In the second half, Golden State just came out and said, okay, it's time now. And that's what I remember happening. I think Golden State was just not going to be denied that game. But, you know,
well,
that's
nobody's
my
ever
going to
forget 0 for 20-something threes.
Thank you. Again, they couldn't hit the side of a barn.
No.
But, you know, Chris Paul, I mean, this guy, now you're talking about a guy that's destined for the Hall of Fame, point guard extraordinaire, one of the best ball handlers ever. I mean, what has he been? He's been an 11-time All-Star, Eddie, 10 games on the All-Defensive team at 6 foot 175. I mean, the guy has led the league in assists, I think, 4 times, and steals, well, in assists 6 times, and steals 4 times. So plays on both sides of the ball. And again, what he was able to do with that team, that young team, with the assistance of Monty Williams, was extraordinary. I mean, again, his leadership ability and the way he just elevates everybody's play around him, it really showed improved in that series. And their lack of experience and lack of being battle tested in the playoffs, really, and then of course they lost Saric in that situation, so they didn't. To your point about Milwaukee and Budenholzer, they made the necessary adjustments. And like you said, Phoenix were not able to combat those adjustments and really do what they had to do to offset what Milwaukee was doing. And that was Giannis playing big, Giannis attacking the paint, them going at DeAndre Ayton, them attacking the offensive boards, and just being dominant and physical, realizing that Phoenix didn't have the manpower on the front line to really stop them. And then, of course, Milwaukee, a team that has been in the playoffs the last couple of years, Giannis, former MVP, 2 times over. I mean, of course, this guy wanted it bad. He's elevated himself in my eyes, and in your eyes, the best player in the league. In my eyes, definitely in the top 3. And I can't argue with you saying he's the best player in the league right now if you look at what he's done as far as 2 MVPs to go along with this championship. So that's not an argument that I'll just be dying to have. You know, of course, I still think Kevin Durant, and I still think LeBron James, if he's healthy. I don't see LeBron still relinquishing the fact that he's a top 2 player in this league just yet, until I see him next season, and just see what he has left. But I know LeBron is going to come back healthy. I know he's going to come back rested. I know he's going to come back motivated. Of course, they're talking about making some changes to elevate that roster. But Giannis has definitely, Giannis was able to show and prove that he's there right now, and he's that guy. And they were just able to just dominate Phoenix. Now, Phoenix, this is why, again, great job by Monty Williams. Great job by Monty Williams and that staff. Willie Green was on that staff 2 years. He's actually going to be the head coach for Zion now with the Pelicans. So congratulations to him. But what Chris Paul was able to do with that young team, and this is why before the playoffs started, I'd always said that I wasn't exactly sure how well they were going to do in the playoffs, and how well they were going to bowl in the playoffs because of their lack of experience, even though I knew they had a very good team and they had a very good regular season, and they still went farther than I thought they would. So this is a team, now I don't know what that means for Chris Paul. The thing about Chris Paul moving forward is, if he does win a championship, and I think the chances are slim, people are saying that he may end up with the Lakers, and again, he's going to be 36. Well, he's 36 now. He's going to be 37. LeBron is going to be 37. I mean, as far as the Lakers are concerned, what kind of shooters are they going to put around them? What are they going to have to give up? Of course, you still have AD. But one thing about Chris Paul, even if he does get to a championship and he does actually win it again, or win it for the first time in NBA Finals, he's probably not going to be the best player on that team. He's probably not going to be an MVP in that series at this point in his career. I think this past season was his best opportunity, but I agree the fact that you cannot discredit him. It may taint it some because of the way it happened. Everybody thought Phoenix was going to get the job done. They were up 2-0. But I tell you this, after Milwaukee won that first game and made it 2-1, Eddie, I said to myself, because we didn't come in, so we couldn't talk about it on the air, but I even mentioned to a few people off the air, I said, Milwaukee's going to win this series, because I just saw the way, again, if you look at their defensive presence and how physical they were getting, and then the way they had started dominating on the boards and things of that sort, even in game 2, even in game 2, I saw the tide kind of turning, even though they lost that game, because Phoenix just started getting hot from the outside and made some very timely 3-pointers. But I saw the tide shifting in that game 2, actually, and I pretty much knew once they tied it up, it was over.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly then now you feel like, home court advantage almost swings back in their favor. If they can go to Philly and steal Game 5 like they did, then they can come back and have Game 6 right there on their home court for all the marbles, and they were able to bring it home. Giannis Antetokounmpo, the reason he proved to me that he's the best player in the world, it has a lot to do with you look at previous playoff series and even just how teams defend him in general. Mm-hmm. Generally, you can put him on the line and you can survive, what Giannis brings to the table. You can survive is in the paint because you can put him on the line and you can limit some of them easy dunks and easy layups. You can turn those into 1 point or no points. I think coming into the finals or into the playoffs, he was shooting just above 50% from the free throw line. Then he goes in the finals. I don't have the number in front of me, but I guarantee you it was up in the 80s.
Yeah.
He didn't miss.
I know.
If he missed, he may have missed once or twice a night. The guy was phenomenal. And for me, under that kind of pressure, to do something that you don't do well and to do it well in that moment, to me, that shows me a different type of player. You have a different type of genetic build. Yeah,
right.
you've got that clutch gene, because to come through in the clutch in something you do not do well over and over again in a championship setting, to me, that elevated Giannis right now to the peak of the mountain.
I got you. And you know what? One thing about Giannis, and I mentioned it last week as well, to your point about his free throw shooting, the way he came through, is I totally agree that for him to come through in those situations when Phoenix's crowd, I mean, they were on him, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and he kept his poise. It actually motivated him to really knock down those shots more than anything. I think, if anything, that urging on and that teasing by the Phoenix crowd actually motivated him to really concentrate even that much more on the task at hand. And obviously in practice, aside from the games, I'm sure he was really working on his free throws. But one thing I like about Giannis, and he really even proved it more in this series, is how relentless he is. And no matter what's going on in the game, he's going to try his three-point every now and then. And the thing about Giannis, he's only going to get better as a shooter. I mean, if he can get better as a free throw shooter like that and see the ball go through the basket, I mean, just think what he's going to do in the offseason to really elevate his game. A guy that's 6'11", that can handle the rock, that can take it downhill better than anyone and finish at the rim. And, of course, you know what he does on the defensive side of the ball. But once he gets that mid-range game going, if he's willing to really work on that mid-range game and really, really, really become a knockdown shooter from there, to go along with being a decent three-point shooter, he doesn't have to be a great three-point shooter, but just enough where the opponent has to respect the fact that he can knock it down. And that's what he was doing. A lot of times people would talk about, well, Giannis, he shouldn't take those threes. All Giannis was doing was keeping the defense honest, letting them know they know he's going to attack the basket. He knows he's going to attack the basket. He was just letting them know, if you start slipping, I will knock down this three, and I will knock down 2 or 3 in a row if you don't think I can make it, and you just start lagging back. But as soon as he takes a couple of those shots, and he makes one every now and then, that brings the defender out on him, and then he does what he likes to do, and that's go to the basket and attack the basket. But one thing about Giannis that I love is no matter what's going on in the game, no matter if he's missing those shots, those aforementioned three-point shots and things of that sort, if he's missing those shots, the fact he keeps coming and it does not deter him from taking another shot. Sometimes those shots are ill-advised, but again, I think it's a method behind it with Giannis. I don't think Giannis is trying to get out of the Florida offense by any means. I think when he does that, he's just setting himself up for better results down the line, and also is going to better his team, because if he's able to do what he loves to do, it's only going to open things up, get those three-point shooters spread out and things of that sort. But when you have guys, Eddie, before we move on, when you have guys like Jrue Holiday, who came through, Chris Middleton, who's a legit star in my eyes now, and then you have, of course, Giannis, and then, of course, P.J. Tucker. When you have those guys on the perimeter defending you with that physicality, I just think as the series waned on, it just took its toll on Chris Paul. And those young guns, they just did not have that experience and were not battle-tested enough to really be the necessary help for Chris Paul. So I don't think it's on Chris Paul either in that regard, even though as time goes on, it's probably going to look like that when people look back on it. But if you really keep it 100 and really harken back to the series and really know what happened, you would know, if you're a basketball fan, you would know that he just had a team that was inexperienced, that was young. DeAndre Ayton, he lost his way the last couple of games. Going to be a great start. Devin Booker is going to be great. Phoenix is going to be great. Now, I think they're going to have to find someone to replace Chris Paul eventually. I think Cameron Payne, as good as he is, I think he's more of a five-starter off the bench. If they can find them another legit superstar point guard somehow, some way, I don't know what Chris Paul plans are for next year, but I think they're going to be a team to be reckoned with for many years to come. But Milwaukee definitely will be a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, you make a lot of good points there, Greg. And I like what you were talking about, Giannis, and keeping the defense honest. I think if you look back at them Golden State teams, we've talked about in here before. Why were they so dangerous? Well, because they could score from anywhere on the court. That's one thing Steph Curry made a big part of his offense is he scored from anywhere on the court. He'd move the ball to anywhere on the court. He could hit any shot. Mm-hmm. And when you could do that, you're very difficult to defend. And right now is a good time for the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo to try to become that type of team. A team that everybody in the league knows that it's going to come down to them and somebody else from the other conference every year. And now's the time for that team to emerge because, since Golden State, we haven't really seen a team like that. Yeah, the Lakers were able to do it in a COVID-stricken season, mm-hmm. but we haven't seen a team that has been that good yet. To me, all the big three and these super teams that are around the league, to me, they're a little bit weaker than Golden State was when they were the super team to beat. And that sort of opened the door for all these other teams, especially a team like Milwaukee. Mm-hmm. They took advantage this season. I think they very easily could do it again next year.
And you know what? I do too. And the fact that they're playing in the Eastern Conference, which is a lot better than it has been in past years. But, of course, the Western Conference is still loaded. I mean, almost 1 through 8, maybe 1 through 10. You have teams like the Memphis Grizzlies, who are only going to get better. You have the Denver Nuggets, who are only going to get better with the return of Jamal Murray. Of course, say what you say about the San Antonio Spurs. Pop is always going to have them competitive. And, of course, we know about the other teams, the top-level teams, Utah, Lakers, Clippers, Phoenix, and I can go on and on. But I think with the way that Milwaukee is built, with the ascension of Giannis and him continuing to work on his game, I think Milwaukee will probably be right back there next year in that Eastern Conference. Now, I said Giannis, I wouldn't want to argue about him being the best player right now until I see what KD and LeBron do next year. And, of course, Luka. Again, Luka is my guy, and I think the most talented player in the league is Luka Doncic, 22 years old. If I was starting a team, I still say I would start with Luka. But, hey, not to rain on Giannis' parade, great job by the Milwaukee Bucks in getting the job done. He has his first championship. And I'm sure in his eyes, he wants to see many more. So kudos to them.
Hey, if I'm starting a team today right now, I'm taking Taco Fall. You can't beat height like that. Height, that's where it's at.
Height kills,
you can't beat height
kills.
like that. Moving on now.
We're 6'11". He's a bad boy.
We're going to get into the NFL. Deshaun Watson walked into NRG on Sunday to begin COVID testing, and now he is going through preparation for the first practice, which is tomorrow. Nobody knows if he's actually going to practice, but a report did come out. The NFL did speak, and they said they're still currently investigating Deshaun Watson. And as of right now, there are no limitations on his club activities, meaning if Deshaun Watson is present tomorrow, Deshaun Watson will be in uniform and he will be on the field. Whether or not he'll be practicing, nobody knows. But this is where things get really interesting, Greg, because right now we're sort of at the apex. At whatever point this could go either way. Deshaun Watson could get on the field, be forced to practice, and then maybe he enjoys practicing with his teammates. Maybe they convince him to play with Houston.
Said before.
Who knows what could happen? But also, while all this talk is going on and all the eyes are on NRG to see if Deshaun Watson shows up, there's also a lot of phone calls being made behind the scenes. Teams are gearing up, putting together their best package they can for Deshaun Watson, hoping they can get him on the cheap. The Texans are they're holding strong right now. How do you see this playing out, Greg? Do the Texans cave? Mike Florio via ProFootballTalk.com, I just read an article. He says the onus is on the Texans to lower the price for Watson. I don't think you could be more wrong. What do you think about that, Greg?
Well, you remember last week I said that was probably going to be the holdup in the Texans really making a move until there's some type of resolution with Deshaun Watson because teams are going to try to sell low because they do not know. I mean, Roger Goodell has still not ruled on a possible suspension, however long that may be. Who knows when he's going to do that? Rusty Harden says he doesn't know when the NFL is going to rule. I know they're going to start taking depositions in September for the plaintiffs on the civil cases. I think 8 women or 10 women yesterday just went to the police department and filed complaints. 8 of those women are also involved in the civil suits. And again, if Deshaun Watson is guilty in that regard, he should be punished accordingly. But see, this is why I never ever apologize about being somewhat of a conspiracy theorist. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to have no career suicide right now, but at the same time, I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to keep it real. I don't know what's going on. One thing you're going to know about me, when I'm finished doing all this, I don't give a damn where it leads to or whatever platform is on. Once I'm finished, you're going to know where I stand, and you're going to know that I'm going to speak my mind and say what's real. So I'm not going to cave or be phony for anyone because of any longevity or what it might hinder longevity. That's not me. That's not happening. But this is why just the timing of it. Now all of a sudden, the day before he's supposed to report to camp, now they're going to the police department. Again, if he's guilty, he should be punished accordingly. But I'll just leave that at that. Now, as far as him on the field, what do I always say, Eddie? Money talks, and you know what walks. BS walks. and $50,000 a day, and a lot of people, now we're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers too. Everybody, Aaron Rodgers is so rich. Again, at the end of the day, we could talk about all what Green Bay did. They came, they met halfway, and I can talk about all what I said about them really not wanting Aaron Rodgers, but then, of course, they want to placate to the media, and they want to make sure that in public opinion, they don't look like the guy who ousted a Hall of Fame quarterback, so they had to operate in a certain way as well, even though they're not saying that publicly. But I think that's behind the scenes in that right there. But at the end of the day, Aaron Rodgers do not want to give up $50,000 a day, period. And that's why I said when it first went down, I said, he'll be back with Green Bay. And that was me just kind of talking at that time. But the reason I said it is because these guys are under contract. And when people say, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers has the leverage or this person has the leverage. No, he doesn't. He's under contract. So you cannot convince me that he has the leverage in that regard. As far as Deshaun Watson on the field, Deshaun Watson did not want to divvy up $50,000 a day. Here's a guy, he probably grew up with nothing, and $50,000 a day, I don't give a damn how much money he's making right now. That's a lot of money. Then what it does, if he reports to camp, he shows these, obviously he's made it clear that he doesn't want to play for the Texans anymore for whatever reason. I mean, whether it's the talent, whether he's tired of getting beat up, and even though he needs to change some of his game and be more smarter too, but whether he's getting tired of beat up, the talent that's left the building, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt is now in Arizona. But the fact that he's going into camp, it shows other teams that may be vying for him that, hey, look, I'm ready to play. I'm in shape. I'm in a good place. I'm not trying to sit out the season. No matter what's going on with me, I'm not trying to sit out the season or run from anything. I want to play football. Then it puts the onus on the Texans to, if they are going to trade him, do they want a disgruntled quarterback in the building? And again, like you said, and I agree with this point, that you never know what can happen once he gets in there. And that probably was the Texans thinking early on when they were saying that they didn't want to part ways with him again. A franchise quarterback is not easy to find. They don't grow on trees. So if the Texans didn't feel that they would take a public relations hit, or if they want to take that chance and feel that eventually people will get over it if we start winning games, no matter what team grabs him, what's already been said in the media has already been said and has already been done. So now it's about how long is he going to be suspended, yada, yada, yada. And when he gets in the building, as far as the people that may bolt, all he has to do is throw a few touchdowns and win a few games, and those people will be right back because that's the way it works. And so Deshaun Watson, it puts the onus on the Texans to really make a move if he's in camp and he's still saying that he wants to be traded, and they have an offer on the table even though it may not be conducive to what they're looking for, it puts the onus on them to really act. Unless they want to see a disgruntled quarterback in there. So who knows, man? Who knows what the thinking is?
A lot of stuff going on there, Greg. A lot of good points. Just first to touch on the 10
it's a lot to unpack right there. Huh?
It's a whole lot to unpack. The 10 women who filed reports with HPD, the strategic timing of that, I think that's more on Busby. I'm not going to put it on the women.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I'm going to put Tony Busby is a very, very intelligent lawyer. He knows what he's doing. He never shows all his cards, and you have to believe, Greg, that he has.
It's all on Busby.
He's had a plan all along on when he was going to release certain information.
Yeah.
And that's the way he's always sort of had a leg up on Rusty Hardin and Deshaun Watson.
You know what he's trying to do right there? You know what he's trying to do right there, Eddie, in my opinion? And I 100% agree. That's all on Busby right there. I didn't mention that, but that's all on Busby. I agree. And what he's trying to do, smear his name in the media right before training camp starts to deter the Texans from wanting him and from anybody else from wanting him. So let's make it be known that we're also filing police reports on him. So anybody that's vying for his services, be aware that, hey, he may eventually even be locked up. So hopefully that will deter somebody that's interested in him and thinking, okay, well, these are just civil charges, so he's not going to be locked up or anything like that. So it's all a plan to continue to deter the Texans from starting to field Deshaun Watson again as a player and as a person, and other teams.
I mean, it's.
That could be.
I think it's more about him just trying to take whatever momentum Deshaun Watson may be gaining by getting back to doing what he does well and playing football, trying to take any of that momentum away. It's like you mentioned, he gets out on the field, he throws a touchdown pass here, he gets a win there, and next thing you know, people are drawn to him and they're back in his corner just based on the way he plays the game.
Right.
And that's just the nature of the business.
At the end of the day, it's all about wins.
That's how things are in sports. That's how things are in this country. Athletes will get a pass or get forgiven a lot quicker whenever they play really, really well. So I don't think there's any doubt that Deshaun Watson wants to get out there in some form or fashion and play, because everything else being said about him off the field is not shining him in a good light. But to me, that was Busby just trying to steal the show back from Watson, trying to steal the momentum back, because as everything was gearing up towards training camp and Watson's not put on the commissioner's exempt list, people start wondering why. They're investigating. There's information out there. How come he's not on the exempt list? Is it because the information is it watered down? Is there something wrong with it? There's reasonable doubt. What's going on here? Because the NFL, the people who investigate this stuff for the NFL, these are former FBI agents, CIA agents, law enforcement. They've got connections that run deep in these police departments. Real talk. Can find out where things are going. And right now, after all this time so far, the investigations that have been going on by HPD, they're not going anywhere. Now, there may be something down the road if they can get more information, but so far, how long has it been, Greg? We're talking months here. It's been months, and so far, they really haven't gotten very far down the road. So that leads us to think that, maybe Deshaun Watson isn't going to get suspended as long as we thought he was going to. Maybe he's not ever going to end up on the commissioner's exempt list. And then, like you said, the ball's in the Texans' court to make a move. But what the Texans aren't going to do is they're not going to take a discount on the value of Deshaun Watson. If teams want to continue to play that card to lowball the Texans while Deshaun Watson still is in this sort of legal limbo, then I can see the Texans easily sitting on him until next year, even if he doesn't play.
And like you said,
I can see them paying him just to hang around. That way next year they will get full value, because there's no reason. It's like trying to sell a house in a bad market. Sit on your house. Don't sell it now unless you absolutely have to. If you don't sit on it, live in it, and then next year or a couple years, whenever when the market bounces back, then you sell when it's profitable for you. After all the losing we've seen Houston do and every deal they've done, you're going to see them win in the Deshaun Watson deal. Otherwise, they're not going to pull the trigger.
Well, they should. I mean, for a guy of his caliber, his talent on the field now, I do feel that at the end of the day that Roger Goodell is going to suspend him, even if it's for 2 games, for 4 games, just from the seriousness of the allegations and the fact that it has something to do with assaulting women. And I think just from the optics of it, I mean, Deshaun Watson is going to have to pay a penalty in that regard. I would be shocked if Roger Goodell threw a curveball and he didn't receive any kind of suspension. Now, it is kind of interesting. It is very interesting that he hasn't acted on it, that he hasn't acted upon it just yet. Now, with the season getting ready to start, training camp has already started. So he's waiting back. I don't know what his reason is.
Well, there's a report out right now on ProFootballTalk.com that the NFL hasn't quite gotten access to everything that HPD has. They haven't quite gotten the access to the victims. Whose names,
after all this time,
whose names we don't all know.
Right.
They haven't gotten access to those guys or to those women, and therefore they haven't been able to interview all of them to make a determination.
Okay.
But like I mentioned before, if the information was out there that Deshaun Watson had done something that's going to land him in prison, I guarantee you that would have already leaked, and it would be news, and we would know about it. Somebody would have a bead on that story.
Right.
They don't. Now, whether or not Deshaun Watson is going to be found guilty civilly or not, we don't know. But as of right now, it doesn't appear that Deshaun Watson has anything hanging over his head, in my opinion, that is going to end his career or keep him from playing football beyond the 2021 season.
I agree. And you know what else that's not hanging over his head? And I'll say it again, and then we can move on. If you want to talk Astros, then come to Aaron Rodgers later and some more football.
Well, we can talk about something that ties into Aaron Rodgers as a Houston Texans wide receiver. Could be on the move, or it's being reported deal is as good as done. Randall Cobb returning to Green Bay to join Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, so, cool.
Apparently that was one of his demands for him to come back.
A video is not hanging over Deshaun Watson's head. Oh, I got you. A video is not hanging over his head. So that's probably one of the reasons why they can't come to some kind of conclusion on a lot of this, because there's just not enough concrete evidence to really make a final ruling. And we'll see how it plays out. Again, I hope the appropriate party wins out in this. And who knows who that is going to be.
Hopefully it's the Houston Texans.
Hopefully it's the Houston Texans. But at the same time, if those women were assaulted, I wish them well. And hopefully they can rebound from it and they get what they deserve as far as whether it's compensation or the right help mentally or whatever it may be. Hopefully they're okay if those things really did happen.
Well, I think
if they didn't happen,
I think what they ultimately would want, and I'm just speculating here, what they ultimately would want would be for Deshaun Watson to be exposed for what he is.
Mm-hmm.
If that is,
I mean, they've done
that's the person that he's done. I mean, but if he's guilty of it, of course they're going after a dollar amount.
Absolutely.
That's definitely that's part of it. But I think they would be. They would feel like they won if, in the end, we find out that Deshaun Watson wasn't exactly the guy that we thought he was, and actually, in fact, was a criminal. Or like I said, I'm speaking hypothetically here.
I got you.
But that I think those women would feel that as a huge victory for Deshaun Watson to no longer be, the face of the NFL and looked at as somebody who is a role model to children.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you're right. They definitely want to expose him for who he is, if that's the case, and that's actually what they're doing now. But if they can end up and on the winning side of things in that regard, if things play out in civil court or wherever it may be, they file charges on him, that would definitely be the case. Or if they can keep him from even playing football this year, if possible. But so we shall see. Again, it's a lot to be determined, and it's a lot still on the plate in that case. So me and Eddie are definitely going to monitor it. As we're going to monitor it as much as possible, and of course we're going to follow Deshaun Watson in camp and see what he does in camp, see if he's a distraction because he's in camp, because all the cameras are going to be on him, and yada yada yada. So we'll see how it plays out. But another guy that's in camp, Eddie, right now, Aaron Rodgers.
That is true. Aaron Rodgers showed up, and like I just mentioned right before you brought this up.
Hold on. First of all, tell him why you called me Moonlight Greg earlier.
Oh, Moonlight Beatty. Greg, Moonlight Beatty. For whatever reason, last week, Greg decided he wanted to sit in this ridiculously tall bar stool that we had in the other room. So he's sitting up there real high. We got to change everything, camera angles and everything. His hair was actually blocking the light, so you couldn't really see his face, and he looked dark as hell.
Like I was at a damn Destiny Child concert. I'm like, man, what the hell? We didn't notice it till after the show.
That spawned the nickname Moonlight Beatty.
We didn't notice it till after the show. I'm like, why is it so dark right there? But hey, that's what happens sometimes here. And this is top-notch equipment in here, A1 quality. Hey, but this is not ESPN or Fox Studios just yet. So y'all got to work with us sometimes. If you see us looking like that or something, somebody just text in, shoot me a text or something. Hey, man, you're sitting in the dark in there, bro. Something, but I thought that was kind of funny. But Aaron Rodgers is back in the fold, Eddie.
Real quick, I hate to put a stop to this. There's breaking news right now. The Astros have made a trade to the Mariners. They're going to acquire Kendall Graveman and Rafael Montero. They're sending Abraham Toro and Joe Smith. And now what makes this trade interesting, and we'll come back around and talk about it when we talk about the Astros, but what makes this interesting is that both teams are playing each other. So all the players have to do is walk out of each other's dugouts, walk across the way.
Right.
It's been reported that Abraham Toro is already on the field
and go find him another hotel room
in a Mariners uniform.
Yeah.
Now, this makes things interesting. If you're following the Astros and you know that Abraham Toro is one of a handful of names of people we thought might fill the shoes of Carlos Correa if he moves on. That no longer the case, as he is no longer an Astro, but the Astros add some pitching help. And what do you think about that move, Greg?
Hey, you know what? The Astros are definitely trying to better themselves. They feel that they have a chance to win it all this year with that potent offense that they have. Now, I like the move. If it's something, if it's really going to help them in that rotation and the bullpen, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what they need. If you look at what happened last night, they blew a 7-run lead and, got out to a quick 7-0 lead, end up losing 11-8. I'm sure that's what helped spur that trade and really, really got that done. Because the bullpen is the only thing right now. Of course, they're not just devastating as a starting pitching staff right now with Verlander not being there. But you have some guys who can go, McCullers. Of course, you have Greinke, Zach Greinke, who's battle-tested, who gets a lot of ground balls. So a game like in the playoffs or something, Zach Greinke and that experience is going to play over because he's going to get a lot of balls hit on the ground. So it's going to be a lot of chances for teams to field it, throw players out. And it's probably going to be a low-scoring game when Zach Greinke pitches and he's on this game, even though he can give up a big home run every now and then too, but who can't? I hope they were able to I wish they were able to get Max Scherzer like we talked about last week and let Mad Max come in here and throw heaters and just go at it. But I like the move, Eddie. I like the move. If you look at that game last night again, blowing that lead, and hey, you have to do something to shore up that bullpen for sure.
You're bringing in two pitchers, and Graveman is a guy who's having a phenomenal year right now. 4 wins, no losses, and an ERA under 1. He comes in at .82. So he's going to bring a much-needed boost to a bullpen that at times has flashed, but at other times has collapsed completely. And they've struggled to throw strikes mightily in some of the most crucial times and crucial games so far this season.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? And again, Dusty Baker is really going to have to figure out exactly – he's going to have to do something with that bullpen. Now, of course, they've had some injuries as well. So you want to have everybody healthy. But like last night, now he had already pitched Javier and Presley Saturday and Sunday. So he couldn't use those two guys because you don't want to burn those guys up. You don't like pitching Javier on back-to-back games. So that put them in a bind last night. And so you have to lengthen that bullpen and really get some longevity out of that bullpen. Now, what you would hope that the starter last night only went 4.5 innings. Again, before he even made one pitch, he had a 6-0 lead. And then by the time he left, he had a 7-0 lead. So that was just one of those fluke games. But you don't want a game like that. You don't want that to snowball because now the Astros, they're on a long road trip. And that's a bad way to start a road trip with a devastating loss like that. And you don't want that to snowball into a road trip to where – how many games are on the road for? 10?
I have to look. I'm not certain.
I think like 10 games. And you don't want to go like 3-7 on your road trip. And then next thing you know, you're behind the A's again.
Oh, no, you can't have that happen. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
But, this is something that you could tell that James Click is going to, nip in the bud and get some other arms in here. I don't think they're done making moves. They probably
Trade deadline is 3
likely
days
want
away,
to add
or
a
2?
starter. I think it's 3.
Okay.
Let's see, where are we at? It's going to be Thursday, correct?
Okay.
And
The NBA draft as well.
they want to add possibly another starter. They're really gearing up to make a run at it all this year, especially when you start thinking about what players could move on. Carlos Correa moving on, Justin Verlander possibly moving on, Greinke and the likes of some others. They're probably going to
Justin
load
Verlander
up.
moving on with the torn.
Well, I'm saying he's going to be.
Oh, you mean after next season?
Yes.
After this season.
So,
I got you.
maybe load up. You give up a couple young guys who maybe you thought were going to be in the fold long term, like a Toro, and you bring in somebody who can help you win the World Series this year. Because over
They're
the years
set to
in
win it
sports,
this year.
over the years in sports, these teams that are built like the Astros, eventually at some point they do break apart piece by piece and start to be dismantled. And we'll see how Click and company handles that situation this offseason. But right now they're going to make a strong push at trying to win the World Series this year and worry about all that stuff later on.
Hey, you know what, Eddie? They definitely have the offensive firepower. Again, if they can get something out of that bullpen, and of course pitching, I mean, it almost goes without saying. But the thing about the Astros, and Dusty is a guy that's been there. I really would love to see Dusty Baker get a World Series ring. I really would. And not only that, the Houston Astros themselves, I mean, if you look at Correa, Bregman, Altuve, go on and on. But I would really love to see that happen. They have the offensive firepower. Can they keep it together for a full season, get the necessary pitching, and get the backing from the pitching staff, especially the bullpen, to really get them over the hump? Because there are some teams. If you look at what Tampa did when they acquired Nelson Cruz, I mean, that's a DH. And Tampa is a team, since we're talking about baseball right now, Tampa is a team that's never had a guy hit 40-plus home runs. As good as Tampa has been, the way as astute as that organization has been over the years, a team with a very low payroll every year, but they found a way, like the Houston Astros, to build from the farm system, build from within, and they've made astute decisions, and they have a tremendous pitching staff. And so Tampa can rate. Now they have that bopper in the lineup at DH, a guy that's, what is Nelson Cruz, 40, 41 years old? But he's had 40-plus home runs the last 5 years. So you add him into the mix with a lineup that's already good, but now you have that pop in the lineup that can probably take you over the wall for a 3-run homer that can take you over the wall for a 3-run homer or a grand slam or 2-run shot at any given moment to really bolster that offense to go along with that pitching staff. I mean, again, they haven't had – the only time they've had – I take that back. The only time they've had a guy hit 40-plus home runs was 1 year, and that was Carlos Pena. But Nelson Cruz is a guy that's done it for the last 5 years. So you add that bat into the lineup, even though he's on the other side of 40, he's still knocking them out the park at like it's no tomorrow. So I think that's a good move by Tampa. And then you have to give props to the Cleveland Indians for changing their name to the Cleveland Guardians in all respect, because the name is racially offensive. And so they changed it to the Cleveland Guardians. And I think the Guardians name is something that's something in reference to the statues downtown in Cleveland.
I honestly have no idea. All I know is I've heard nothing but negative
Guardians
reviews
of Traffic
on the name. I mean, anything that makes any group of people feel racially attacked in any way, I think, should be evaluated, and they're doing the right thing by changing. Mm-hmm. I know you'll have some people come out. I have American Indian in my blood. You'll have some come out that say that they take pride in the Indians being called the Indians, and the same thing
that side of
with
it too.
With the Redskins, and they're disappointed that this happened. But the truth is, the way things should be approached is that if it offends somebody, then it needs to be reviewed and addressed. And the Indians did that. I just wish they would have picked a better name
than the Guardians.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I'll say that name. I mean, what other name could they have gotten?
Now,
of course, they're trying to represent Cleveland.
Now, maybe
it's not a terrible name.
Maybe the logo. I think the logo could have used some revisiting.
Because what the word Guardian usually
when you
means.
Go back to the red-faced Indian in a hat, with the big smile. Maybe that was a little, over the line.
A little bit too much, right.
But, the word Indian, to me, or a team being called the Indians, to me, I don't think that's racially charged or racially offensive, in my opinion. But, kudos to them for making a move and for doing what they feel like is the right thing.
Well, to
Guardians
your point about
the,
you don't feel offended, the Kansas City Chiefs said they're staying put.
So
they may be thinking on the lines like you.
That's like Kings. You know, they were the leaders of the tribe. So to me, it's an homage. You know,
so
it's
everybody
not,
has their own opinion.
It's not a knock.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't have an opinion one way about it. But like you said, you have Indian in your blood, and you feel like you do about it. So, and then like you said too, if people feel offended by that, I mean, why go through the turmoil of the public backlash dealing with that? Just change the name. Maybe you're right. Maybe they could have found a better name. Of course, they're trying to represent the city of Cleveland in that regard. Right. And so, hey, I don't think the name is terrible, but it is what it is.
I've heard everything from I like the name to why don't they change the name of the Browns because I'm brown and I think that's racist. You know, I've heard I've heard serious, it all, man.
That's about Paul Brown, the guy's last name, one of the best coaches of all time.
I've heard it all, man.
But okay.
But it was one of my friends saying that with having tongue in cheek saying that, but nonetheless, you know, it makes you wonder, you know, this is a thing that started with the Washington football team and you know,
that name has grown on me.
We'll see now where it's going to go, you know, how many more teams, because if you open up
I like the Washington Warriors.
The great book of all team names, and you add NCAA, you add all the minor league affiliates and everything like that, there are a lot of, you know, Indian, Chippewa, all different types of, you know, Native American team names, and we'll see which ones get changed.
Yeah. I mean, Florida State Seminoles. Speaking of Florida State, I mean, rest in peace, Bobby Bowden. He hasn't died yet, but he's been diagnosed.
I'm about to say, damn, you breaking news right now?
Right, I'm not breaking any news about Bobby Bowden other than the fact that he's been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And you know what? And hopefully I'm wrong in this regard, but usually when you've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and again, I hope he lives as long as possible, as long as God keeps him around. But pancreatic cancer is one of the worst cancers you can attain, and it takes people out quickly. I had an uncle that passed from pancreatic cancer maybe about 10 years ago, who I miss dearly, as a matter of fact. And it takes you out quickly, and that's a very progressive cancer. So Bobby Bowden has been diagnosed with that. And so, hey,
happy trails to Bobby Bowden. I hope he recovers well.
And Greg Knapp.
Greg Knapp, you know, condolences to Greg Knapp's family, killed in a bicycling accident. He was the passing game coordinator for the New York Jets and also former offensive assistant for a few years here under Gary Kubiak and Rick Dennison. Tragic story, that one, with
very tragic,
with Greg Knapp, gone way too soon. Now that we've transitioned back to the NFL, we can get back to talking about Aaron Rodgers, who is in camp. Did you see the look? The mullet is fierce. The guy's got the hair down beyond the collar.
I actually like Aaron Rodgers.
Down below the collar of his shirt. He looks like he's ready to go, man.
Yeah, he does. He does.
He's got that confident strut. Now, maybe
and that's why I like him so much.
Maybe
he's an
individual. This whole contract and dispute with the Packers didn't quite turn out the way he wanted it to turn out with him being traded. I don't know, to the Patriots or whoever. But, you know, he looks like he's in great shape, and he looks like he's confident. He wants to go out there and prove that he is a guy who deserves a little bit more responsibility and a little bit more inclusion into what goes on in the franchise. Right now, the Green Bay Packers are in talks to acquire former Green Bay Packer wide receiver Randall Cobb, who's currently under contract with the Houston Texans. Because I read an article yesterday or the day before,
but that's just me.
that Aaron Rodgers said bringing Randall Cobb back into the fold was a must if they wanted him to play for Green Bay this year.
Okay.
So when Aaron Rodgers wants a guy that bad, if they're going to go out and get him, that shows me that we're seeing both sides now concess a little bit. We're seeing Aaron come in. Even though he's been all disgruntled and he's wanted a new contract, he did sign an amended contract, although it only voids 1 year at the end of his deal. So he's still under contract for this year and next year. But you're also seeing Green Bay, who has been operating, like we've said in the past, not getting Rodgers involved with these types of decisions, not allowing him to make personnel decisions. Rodgers wants, you know, receiver X on the team, and the team turns around and cuts that guy, you know, a week later. But Rodgers demands Randall Cobb get traded. Randall Cobb is under contract with Houston, and the contract isn't one of the greatest contracts you would think. You think he's a little bit overpaid. But here at Green Bay, they're going to go out. They're going to get the guy. Now, we don't know what they're going to give up just yet. But the fact that they're willing to make that move shows me that this is the beginning of what may be a reconciliation between these two, or it's just a way for them to coexist right now and get the most out of each other, them being Aaron Rodgers and one head coach, Matt LaFleur.
Right. And, I mean, and you know what, too? It's all going to how the season plays out as far as wins and losses and the way business is conducted, like you're talking about right there. That's going to determine how long Aaron Rodgers wants to stay. Because even if it is true that in the back of their minds, they're ready to move on and they're ready to see what Jordan. I don't think they saw enough in Jordan Love. It kind of handcuffed them. I don't think they saw enough in Jordan Love doing the mini camps and things of that sort where they felt that they could really continue to play hardball with Aaron Rodgers. And even if they did want to move on from, now granted, former MVP as early as last season. Last season he was the MVP. Went to the NFC Championship the last 2 years. So, I mean, a logical person would think that Green Bay definitely wants this MVP in the fold. And so what's happening now is it's like they can play both sides of it to where, okay, they can have him for one more year and they can make the fans happy. As far as the media is concerned, it won't look like they ousted a Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to acquiesce to some of his wants and demands.
Keep him happy in the meantime.
And then if they want to part ways,
I think they're working out Jordy Nelson this weekend too.
Okay, I'm
kidding.
No,
Jordy's done.
Is he done? Okay,
yeah, Jordy's done.
But now, if they want the draft next year is going to say a lot. If Aaron Rodgers has say-so in who they draft, just say if Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave from the Buckeyes or somebody or any of these Alabama wide receivers or Clemson wide receivers or LSU wide receivers or any top-notch wide receiver is on the board and they don't feel that they have the necessary production other than Devontae Adams, you know he's going to put up numbers. But you're going to have, if you want Aaron Rodgers around for the next few years, you definitely want to add a legitimate second weapon to that offensive arsenal. So if the draft comes around next year and Aaron Rodgers, he's vowing for a wide receiver that he actually wants, and then they end up taking a, say, defensive lineman, even though they may need a defensive lineman, and then I think you're going to see it all play back again. But both of these teams right now, him and the Packers, they've met halfway up to this point. But again, what it boils down to is that moolah. Aaron Rodgers does not want to part with $50,000 a day. I don't care what no one says. He does not want to part with $50,000 a day. Plus, he's a competitor, and he does. And so they were not going to trade him at the end of the day after watching Jordan Love, even though they probably would have loved to see Jordan Love take that leap to where they can say, okay, well, we'll go ahead and trade him. He wants out. But then they had to think about the public backlash, things of that sort.
Well, everything I've heard so far is that Love looks great in camp.
Okay.
Which is fine, all fine and good.
They didn't look terrible, but
however, if you make
just
the move and you trade Aaron Rodgers right now, to get value for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get what back in return? Draft picks, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Those picks don't hold as much value right now as they did before the draft.
Right.
So if you could trade Aaron Rodgers right now for, all the first round picks in the world. The problem is the draft doesn't happen until next year in May. So what are you going to do this season when you've already got a guy under contract and you're already going to pay him a lot of money? Let me tell you something. They had a shareholders meeting.
If Jordan Love would have been ahead of the curve and probably would have went on and pulled the switch on that. And like I said before, if it's a situation where Matt LaFleur really wants to put his imprint on a young quarterback, and if he really felt that he can win with that quarterback, and it does, and he's winning quicker, more sooner than later, even though you may take a step back because of the departure of Aaron Rodgers, if he would have felt, and the organization would have felt that Jordan Love could at least get them 10 wins, get them in the playoffs, and then they can go from there. And then those draft picks that you would acquire for Aaron Rodgers, then you get them in next year's draft, and then you really see a leap the following year in Jordan Love's second year as a starting quarterback. So, hey, but again, they win in the situation anyway because you're getting the MVP back in the fold and one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Right.
No matter what your thinking is is behind the scenes.
They had a shareholder meeting, and those shareholders are the ones who are ultimately going to decide, what's the course of action for Gutekunst and company over there on how they're going to handle the situation with Aaron Rodgers. Similar to the way, Easterby, Casario, and Cully will walk into the McNair's office. There's a shareholder, that there are shareholders board that is going to handle these decisions, and they had a meeting just the other night, and we don't know what was discussed in that meeting, but I guarantee you Aaron Rodgers was one of the topics, and it just makes more sense for the organization as a whole. Even if you're going to move on from Rodgers next year, it makes more sense to have him play on your team this year.
It does. I mean, it really does.
It really doesn't make sense to trade him now because you're not going to get the value you would in return had you traded him before the draft.
And again, like I said, a logical person, a logical thinker, I mean, you're right. They would definitely want Aaron Rodgers. And I've said this in past weeks, even when I've made the assumption and the speculation about what I think they really may want in the long run or at the end of the day. But of course, if they can get Aaron Rodgers back, if it's a situation where they don't look bad, of course, they don't look bad in getting rid of him and things like that, and they were able to trade him at a time where he said he really wanted out, and then get something. But like you said,
you're getting something you can use right now when you trade him before the draft.
Right, a logical thinker would be like, okay, you want the MVP back in the house. We were in the NFC Championship last year. You want him back on the team right now. So it was just a funny situation. And again, all this happened, and that's why I always said, a lot goes on until it's time to strap it up. When it's time to put on the helmet and strap your chin strap up and things like that, and when you start getting fines and things of that sort, and people start seeing other people competing, and they have that competitive feeling, and Aaron Rodgers is a competitor. At this point in his career, at 36 years old, he's not 26 years old, so he don't want to waste a year of his prime as a quarterback sitting at home. And no matter how confident he is in his ability and his throwing ability, no matter how long he thinks he can play, 36 years old, he wants to get out there and compete. He was on the cusp of a Super Bowl last year. But it's always when it's a lot of time before the season starts, it's always a lot of things happening and going on behind the scenes, and things you're going to hear play out and see play out in the media, that at the end of the day, all you have to do is stay patient and wait. That's why I said last week, we'll have more clarity on the situation once camp starts next week, because that's when it gets real. That's when they start taking money out of their bank account. And again, at the end of the day, they can talk about all these concessions and how they met halfway and things like that. Aaron Rodgers wanted to play ball, for one, and we'll see how it plays out this season and if he can stay happy and then he continues, because I'm sure if it goes well, he would like to finish his career as a quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback that played in one city, a historic franchise with great tradition like the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is smart enough to realize it would behoove him to finish as a Green Bay Packer more than moving on somewhere else, unless he felt he can go somewhere and immediately challenge for a Super Bowl. But again, once it comes to the money being taken out of that account, that'll make you walk your ass back to camp real quick, because again, he was under contract. He's under contract for the next couple of years. Now, they made some concessions, but the fact that he was under contract, that had a lot to do with him saying, okay, I'll come back to camp.
Now on to the future 2021 Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. They've got a whole band of injured players that are getting back together in training camp this year. When you talk about Dak Prescott, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and La'el Collins, these are 5 big names and 5 crucial parts of that Cowboys offense that just did not look anything like it's looked the past couple years without Dak Prescott and without that cohesive offensive line. Blake Jarwin in particular is a guy I'm going to keep my eye on, because he's been one of those guys that was a choice find for the Cowboys, and then you see him go from being just a raw prospect to a guy who's really shown you he's got the potential to be an every down tight end in this league. And it was unfortunate to see him go through that injury he had last year, but back on the field this year with a Dak Prescott, with all that contract issue behind them, and an offensive line that is geared up to have a healthy season and stay together all year long. This may just be the year that Blake Jarwin has his best season, and we see why the Cowboys were so fond of him him and gave him that contract whenever his old one was up.
Eddie, I like the fact you brought up Blake Jarwin's name, because when an offense like that, when you have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott who's coming back in great shape, hopefully he can stay healthy. Again, the offensive line is key. Like you just said, Lyle Collins, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin. I mean, once they get that, if they can stay healthy, the thing with these offensive lines, it's always a banged up offensive lineman that's probably going to miss a game here or there every week. But for the most part, if they can stay healthy for the majority of the season and have that continuity on that offensive line, I think they're going to be great. I think Lyle Collins is probably going to have his best year. He's only like, 24, 25. Zach Martin. Tyron Smith, now, I don't know. He has a chronic back injury that hopefully it holds up. But just his presence on the offensive line, he's a future Hall of Famer. He's only, I think, like 30, 31.
Sometimes guys like that, having all that time off is really what they needed. Let every little ache and every little thing heal up.
Yeah, I hope that's the case.
And then you come back fresh, and then it's about load management after that.
I hope that's the case, because if you can establish their running game, even though you've paid Dak all that money, and they're probably going to lean on the passing game even more so than anything, and really let Zeke eat and really feature him as a second.
He's shredded, man. He looks like a Ninja Turtle.
Well, that's why I was telling you before I answer your question about Blake Jarwin.
Have you seen? I saw a short with him, and he's ripped down to the core.
Well, see, that's why I was saying when we were joking about Zeke a few weeks ago, when I was talking about Zeke has always been known ever since his days at Ohio State. He's out now, even though he has fun off the field. I mean, he works hard and he plays hard, but Zeke plays hard off the field. But Zeke has always been known to be a hard worker on the football field. Now, last year, I think kind of was an aberration. He came in not the best shape. But I think, again, with him realizing that he's 26 years old, just turned 26 this month, I think a couple of weeks ago. We share a birthday the same month. But so I think for a running back, especially with a good offensive line and some great talent around him at receiver and quarterback, Zeke has 3 top-level years left in him if he can stay healthy.
That's quite possible.
Right. So, at least till 28. And maybe even longer. There's some guys that play longer than that if he keeps himself in shape and he takes his off-season regimen, if he continues to take that very serious. But Blake Jarwin, I like your point about Blake Jarwin and the element that he could bring to this Cowboys offense, because what you see in a lot of these great teams these days, a la the Kansas City Chiefs, and I can go on and on, they have great tight ends who can get the job done. And I'm talking about athletic tight ends. And that's what Blake Jarwin is. He's an athletic tight end. Now,
well, you force teams into packages that are going to lighten the load on the back end, as I say, so that they can cover these guys that
down the field
set up mismatches with their speed, typically where you may have a safety on the guy. Now maybe you bring in a nickel corner because he's just that good, or you designate a safety just to watch him, and all that softens up lanes for the running game.
Absolutely. And then you have 3 tremendous receivers in Amari Cooper. You have Gallup. Then you have C.D. Lamb.
Young Buck.
I mean, he's coming to his own wearing number 88, so you know how they feel about him. Then you have Dak coming back, who's going to spread the ball around. But if Blake Jarwin, if he's coming off that knee injury and he's healthy and he can stretch the field, and as great as Jason Witten was, Hall of Fame tight end, going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, he did not stretch the field. He did not give them that element, at least later on in his career. Now, when he was at Tennessee, he could do it every now and then, and early on in his career at Dallas, but he was never known for a guy who was probably going to outrun a safety, or a guy that you knew was going to probably run a flag route from the tight end position, or a guy that you could really put in the slot and he can run any route on the route tree. What you have with Blake Jarwin, you have a guy that has wide receiver type skills at the tight end position, and you could also put him in and he can be a good blocker. Now, Jason Witten was a tremendous blocker. So, of
there's
course,
something
Blake
to be
Jarwin,
said about always being in the right place at the right time. And that's something that Jarwin can do. Whenever you're an offense that has a tight end that's always in the right place at the right time, that becomes a security blanket for the quarterback. And we know how necessary those are and how big of a difference they can make for offenses whenever he's able to hit that guy who's right there at the sticks, right when you need him to be, or who's breaking in between a couple of safeties who lost sight of him. Those types of tight ends are parts of big, powerful offenses, like you mentioned, like the Chiefs, Who's another one I'm leaving out?
Oh man,
like the Browns with Hooper.
Yeah.
The Falcons with Hayden Hurst. All these offenses
Now
that
the Falcons with the rookie.
Yeah, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank right now on the young guy they drafted
from Florida.
Yes,
the guy from Florida,
Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts. Now, I like what you said about Zeke, that he really, if you think about him going all the way back to Ohio State, the type of work ethic he had, the type of shape he got in, it looks like he's gotten back to that. He might have lost sight of it there for a little bit. But when you talk about prolonging the career of an NFL running back, I'm telling you what these scouts look at and what people are all around the league are going to be look at when they watch Zeke Elliott is how does he bounce back from a down year? Because what we see happen to running backs all the time is they'll have a down year and then they're never the same.
Yeah, because he fumbled the ball a lot last year too.
But you have those rare occurrences where you'll have a guy like Adrian Peterson who will have that down year and then he'll come back and prove you wrong. And that shows longevity. That shows the ability to rebound. And that's what Zeke Elliott needs to show the rest of the league because let's face it, I know that he he's got that big contract with the Cowboys. But even if he's going to be in the league 3-4 more years, there's a chance that he's going to have to convince another team, to take him in, to sign him, and to go with him as their guy. And the only way he's going to do that is to show that he's not in the decline, that he can actually bounce back from some of these subpar seasons.
I 100% agree. And again, I think that
that big contract may work against him in the end with the Cowboys. If he wanted to be there for his whole career, that big contract may eventually start working against him.
Well, I mean,
it's kind of what I'm getting at.
No. Man, I got you on that. And again, I agree that he's going to have to come in because he has a guy in the backfield with him that he shares the load with. And I think that's another motivating factor for Zeke coming in this year and really proving that he's still that guy because he doesn't want to give up these carries like he did last year. And, I mean, so Zeke is going to come in. He seems like he's dropped some weight. And again, I think with the continuity and a healthy offensive line, I still think Zeke has that burst and he has that ability. But it's going to be interesting to see where he is mentally. He's a mentally tough guy from what I understand. And so I can see him, as long as he has some early success and they show him that they have confidence in him as a player still and they don't go away from him. Just say if he has an early fumble early on in the season and then they decide to go away from him and take his playing time away.
I mean, he hasn't
if they feed Zeke, if they feed Zeke,
you breaking news?
I'm not breaking any news about Bobby Bowden, but it's going to be interesting to see where he is mentally. He's a mentally tough guy with those wide receivers at his disposal and Dak at quarterback. I think the lanes are going to be more opened up because you can't just sit back and put all these guys in the box like you used to. Even though Zeke had those first phenomenal couple of years, now you have to worry about the Cowboys' passing game, which is probably going to be their main attack is you're going to have to stop this passing game. Again, like you said, you have Blake Jarwin back in the mix as well to go along with those receivers. So Zeke should have more room to freelance. I still want to see – now you know he's going to run tough. You know he's going to run hard. He's never going to be a Barry Sanders type and elusive type runner where he's going to – give you that, excuse me. But I still think Zeke, if he breaks in the open, if he ever breaks in the open, he can take it to the house. He just hasn't been able to elude that last defender a lot of times because he hasn't got to that next level because the offensive line was so bad for one. And for two, sometimes he doesn't make that last sudden herky-jerky move to free himself where he can get going and get off to the races. So we'll see what happens, man. But I like the way the Cowboys look on paper. You have Dan Quinn on the defensive side of the ball. You have Michael Parsons, who we've talked about ad nauseum. You have him, man, in the middle. He's going to be calling the shots from the inside linebacker position, I would think. I don't know if that's going to be him or Jalen Smith. But what you have to do with Michael Parsons, you have to let him cause havoc and rake havoc all over the field. I think he will. And in turn, what I think is going to do with that defense, not only are they going to be coached up better and they're going to be in better positions because – they're going to be in a better position to succeed because of Dan Quinn and his ability to coach them up. You have Trayvon Diggs, who's going to have that experience at cornerback. I think the cornerbacks, they're going to be better on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, they drafted heavy on the defensive side of the ball. Hopefully, some of these young guys can come in as a rookie and contribute right away. But you have a guy like Michael Parsons, who I think has that Devin Bush type of ability and Devin White type of ability. type of ability for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You see what they did when they went to the Super Bowl last year. Oh, man, you see those Super Bowl rings? Off the chain. Off the chain. But you have Michael Parsons roaming that middle, and I think what he's going to do with his play, if he stays healthy, he's going to elevate everybody else's play around him because of his energy and his playmaking ability. And I just think it bodes well for the entire defense. And, again, along with Dan Quinn putting them in a position to succeed. So I'm curious to really see how the Cowboys look on the defense side of the ball.
They certainly need to get back to the days where they have somebody in the middle of the defense that they can depend on to be there and make the plays that Sean Lee used to make year in and year out, game in and game out, before he started having the injury issues that he had throughout his career. Stability at that position is a must.